This is our next week in the garden. You can see our bachelor's button is getting bigger. We have our other flowers here, and the flower bud is starting. We have our clematis climbing up the trellis. Flowers are starting. It's a little breezy today, which is nice. There's some daffodils. Now we're at the second garden I have, which has my hostas. And you see from last week, the hostas have grown pretty big, and there's more of them around the tree than there was last week. Our next garden has the astilbe, which I showed you before. As you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them now instead of just 2. And they're coming in nicely. And over here we have the bleeding hearts. I showed you the pink ones. There's the pink ones coming in nice. And now these are the white bleeding hearts. All right, further along, I showed you the blueberry bush last week. It hasn't changed much this week, but it's there. We have a raspberry plant that actually is not where it belongs, but I'm going to show it to you. You can see it's getting pretty big. I have gloves on because if you look real close, I'll bend it over, you can see it has some prickles on it. So I'm protecting my hands from getting poked by the prickles. So we have that raspberry bush and this little one. They're not supposed to be outside the fence, but they are. Here's the ones inside the fencing. That's our blackberry bush. You can see that's coming in with about 5 or 6 different stems. And over here's the golden raspberry. It's still kind of small because it's a new plant from last year. Hopefully it'll get bigger. Now, I didn't show you this one before because it wasn't coming in, but I have a pot that has other plants. And this one is a lavender plant, and it just started to come back. I'll pull the roots out of the other one that's in there because it's not. A lavender plant is what that one is. Now this is the apple tree I've been showing you. I'm going to back up a little bit so you can see how big that apple tree is and how tall it is. It's got all those really nice white flowers that will eventually, some of them will become apples. Okay, I'm going to go to a branch and get you a closer look. You can see you've got the flowers growing, and you've got this other branch coming up that's going to be growing another part of the tree. And we have the azalea bushes again. They're starting to die, because that's what they do after they flower. And what we get instead is new green leaves. So the bush is going to get bigger. This is the old growth. This is the new growth this year that comes after the flowers. And that's what it does every year, is it grows new growth to get bigger. Next to that is our peony. If you remember those red stems that we had before, they were kind of small. Well, here they are now. You can see they're about the length of my hand to my elbow. So they're pretty tall now. And the leaves are starting to come out and open up. But you can see it's a pretty tall plant now. Now, I have a couple flower pots in the front of my house, and when you know, one of the flowers is coming back that I grew last year. That's a marigold, and it's coming up all by itself. Now, I showed you the bleeding hearts in the front yard last week. You can see the one has flowers on it. And then there's the second plant. There's a third bleeding heart coming up. That's our hydrangea. It's still small, takes a long time to grow. Here's another one of our bleeding hearts. It's kind of small though. I've got some hosta coming in too. That comes in around here. And of course, here's our lilac bush. Starting to really show the green leaves. And more of those green leaves means more of these purple flowers that are starting. They're kind of small right now. They'll be bigger later. Now, last week we talked about the lilies that I have. And you can see there's 1, 2, 3. This one seems to be broken. The deer might have eaten that. And there is a 4th one. It's pretty tall. And that's going to come in. It's going to be as tall as I am. And we have more of that hyacinth, still blooming purple. And we have mountain pinks. And there's that candy tuft I showed you last week with the tiny little white flowers. I'm going to get a little closer for you. And those are pretty little white flowers. Oh, and there's a bee flying in our garden, pollinating some of the plants that we have. You can see him. That's the lemon balm. I told you about the coreopsis. This is a yellow flower. It comes in on small little stems. It was only tiny last week. It's a lot bigger now. And we have, I showed you little tiny Chinese balloon flowers. You can see those purple stems coming in this week. There's a whole line of them there in front of the fence. And they'll grow up and cover that fence. And here's more of our lilies. And they'll grow here and fill that space in. Last is the greenhouse. We go in the greenhouse. Unzip it with me. Now, it's a little breezy, so it's really hot in here. Ooh, let me unzip the other side. See if we can go in. Check out all the plants. Now, you'll notice there's some new pots in here. I've planted some new things, and hopefully they'll come up. These are our flowers that we did before. A few more are coming in. I don't know if they're going to work, but we're trying. And we've got more lettuce from last week. And our tomato plants from last week. You see, I added a stick to kind of hold them up. We've got pepper plants coming in now. Those are those green, red, and yellow foods that you eat. And some of our potato plants are doing well. You can see the buds coming in here and here. Hopefully we'll get more of those plants soon. It's our dill plants. We finally have some little lettuce plants coming in this pot. Still waiting for the plants that we put in here. And I just planted some squash, green squash, and acorn squash in here. So they haven't come up yet. I only planted them 3 days ago. All right. And down here, cilantro still isn't up, but we're trying. Oh, there's some basil. I just started that. Our sage plant has come in very nicely. And this one's got some basil too, starting here. We've got the morning glories coming in very well. Here, I told you we had bean plants. There's one bean. There's another bean coming up through the soil. And there's a third one. You can see there's a couple seeds still sitting there waiting. We're hoping they start to sprout soon. And there's one of our lettuce plants coming in finally. It takes a little while when it's cold out. And we have our garlic. This one is the fennel that we planted. Now I know they look like they're not doing so well right now. I just transplanted them here, and hopefully they'll do well in a little while. It takes a couple of days for them to get used to being in a pot. So hopefully they'll get used to things out here. And here we have some zinnias, flower seeds coming in. All right, so now we have inside, we have our pumpkin plants that are going. Here's one of them. Here's another. I'm going to turn them so that they grow straight. There's the first one, nice and big. We have a celery plant, which is doing really well. And this is the romaine that you saw me plant the other day. And that's coming in. It's a lettuce plant. And hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and I will put another one up next week.